What is going on, 636 fam? It is your least favorite moto vlogger, Brian636 here with kind of a different kind of video today. I think it need to be said because I've, ran into the issue myself so many times. It is summer. It is 80, 85, even 90 degrees on some of these warm summer days, and it's extra humid. So us sport bike owners know that you're in a constant battle to keep your motor cool, especially if you're sitting in traffic, and especially if you're stunt riding and you're riding at a high RPM or high idle. Some guys set their idle at 3, 4, 5,000 grand in the streets, in the lot, whatever. So keeping your bike cool is a constant battle for a lot of stunt riders and even regular sport bike riders alike. So today I have 6 ways that I've kind of found to help keep my motor a little bit cooler, help preserve the life on your motor. So I'm gonna get into that and not going to beat around the bush at all, jump right in. First and foremost is your radiator. You want to make sure, of course, it doesn't have any leaks. You want to inspect the fans themselves. See if I can focus in. Inspect the fins themselves, not the fans. Inspect the fins themselves. Make sure there's no debris, blockages, bunch of dead bugs. I've seen a bunch of crap in there that will definitely clog up a radiator, old oil, whatever. They sell a couple of cleaners for them, like grill cleaners, stuff like that foams up in there and pushes stuff out the back, and you just hose it down. I've just ran a garden hose over it, pretty high pressure, and that seems to do the trick and get a lot of the blockages out. Make sure your system is well burped inside your radiator. What that means is that you don't have any air. Make sure you run your bike not to a high temperature. Take off your radiator cap, make sure it's all the way filled. Before, of course, I want to emphasize that before it is super hot, just when it's warming up, the motor itself, when it's running, will be pumping coolant through. So make sure your system's burped. That should be pretty obvious. Make sure you have fluid in it. The next thing, the second, is of course the fluid itself. A lot of guys still run 50-50 coolant. I don't know why, but they do. Over the years, I've ran engine ice, and now I'm actually running water with a supplement of water wetter in it, an additive I should say, in it, and that's actually been the best luck I've had so far. Engine ice, my bike would normally run anywhere from 205 to 215 in the streets, sometimes a little bit hotter in the lot. And I started running the water wetter, and kind of just what it says on the back. It says water plus water wetter, 202 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is pretty much right what it'll sit at max, is right in the early 2s there, maybe 203, 204. And that's in the lot as well when it's not getting a lot of airflow to it. So having a good fluid in there is absolutely essential. But I need to say this because a lot of guys like myself, when live in a climate where it changes quite a bit, water plus water wetter will freeze. So if you leave that in your motor over winter and it freezes, you have a chance of cracking your head. You have a chance of doing some real serious damage to your bike. So make sure you drain that out before you store the bike. But for heat dispersion, there's nothing better than water, and the little bit of water wetter helps quite a bit as well. So on to the next thing, and this is going to be kind of, I hope, apparent to the stunt guys, but to the non-stunt guys that are just here trying to keep your R6 or whatever stock bike cooler, this might not be so obvious. We run a switch to our fans, so our fans are hardwired on and off whenever we want. Some guys hardwire them on to start at 190, 180. As soon as it turns on, some guys splicing in their ignition. I don't know, I found the best luck with just running it on a switch. And the second part of that, you can run just your stock one, just one fan, or you can also get, I think there's an R6 fan off of like a newer R6. It's a Panasonic, it's really high powered. So I run 2 fans, and you can get the brackets online. You can make the brackets, they're really not hard. They're literally just a piece of thin aluminum that's bent to shape for a fan to mount up. So running 2 fans for stunt guys, that should be pretty obvious that that's something you're doing. For stock guys, maybe having your stock fan hardwired on will help you quite a bit in keeping your temperature down, because of course that just provides more airflow through those exact fins on the radiator that we were talking about earlier. Spacing. This is once again something that if you have a radiator cage, this is something you're going to get the chance to do. On an F4i, I don't really know how well you guys have this, but there's a piece of you see that right there? It's like a spacer between the radiator and the header. That little bit of spacing, that's like a piece of, what is that? Like, I don't know, a washer, or like I guess an actual spacer off of something that I found before. And it's about, you know, half an inch, maybe inch. And you know, you might say, oh, what's an inch, half an inch? But that pushing your radiator off the headers an inch or a half an inch more is huge. Keeping those fans and that radiator a little bit, you know, farther away from those extremely hot headers makes all the difference. Now, with that being said, you need to make sure that you still have clearance for your front wheel. The last thing you want to do is come in on a stoppie and flip over because your radiator is so spaced out and it hits your front wheel. So spacing it, that's a pretty, you know, I noticed a pretty well jump in temperature gauge when I did that. I think my bike went down to even like 180s in the lot, but I don't think anything really does as much as this next thing, number 5. That's header wrap. That's kind of a science in and of its own. I don't have the time or the, you know, patience to do that again on video because it does take a while. Although you can go on YouTube and there's plenty of guys that have done it, you know, all 4 of them, all the way back to the mid pipe, you know, back in there. So header wrap pretty much keeps the heat inside the headers and allows an extra surface area for it to dispense. So it's kind of a science and an art in and of itself, wrapping headers. You got to make sure they're done tight. You got to make sure they're done right. And there's a lot of techniques to do it. Also, guys do ceramic coating, but making sure that your headers are as cool as possible is essential, because when you look at the location of that to your radiator, you know, that's right there. So having those be cooler is huge, because your motor's probably not the hottest thing. Your headers are, where the exhaust is coming out of. And I think the last thing, not really a huge one here, but your radiator cap, you want to make sure that's in good condition. To have a radiator cap with a spring that doesn't, you know, push up and doesn't allow it to boil over, that's a huge risk. And on top of that, sometimes they'll have debris in them and they won't be sealing properly. So getting a new good radiator cap is key. I actually went with this high pressure radiator cap from the Six Shop, and once again, I'm not sponsored by them either or have anything to do with them, but this raised the boiling point of the fluid up like 25 degrees. So that's just so nothing's like spilling out of my overflow when it's really not needed, when it's, you know, at 215 or whatever. Because the stock one I think would start boiling over at like 215 or 217 or something like that. And it was just like, what are you doing, you know? So that helped quite a bit. So guys, take all this with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, you should be trying your absolute hardest to keep your motorcycle at the coolest temp humanly possible, because that's probably the #1 way to preserve some of these older model Japanese bikes, water-cooled bikes, is to keep them cool. You know, a lot of these guys that blow their motors, they'll be at a really high temp doing rev limiter coasters all the way through, and it's like, oh, I blew my motor, what the hell? And it's, yeah, your bike was at, you know, 240 blinking, you know, telling you high temp, and you just kept going. So keeping it cooler, keeping the metal at the coolest temperature humanly possible, that's key here. Before I end the video, actually, I wanted to give a special shout out to Brap Straps. I really do appreciate them making us our own glove. We have this limited edition Chicago Brap Strap glove out on the website for Lean Back this week. If you guys are coming in town, I'm super excited to have you guys here. This is always, you know, one of the most fun, but one of the most stressful weekends of the year for myself and a lot of the guys that help out around it. But I wanted to give that a special shout out because that was pretty cool that he wanted to do a collab with me over that. So if you guys like these, if you guys enjoy Brap Straps like I do, they're, you know, work with your phone, really flexible, you know, good for working a handbrake or whatever. Check out the link in the description. I'll link them down there. But as always, I appreciate you guys being here. I really do love each and every one of you guys, and I hope this video helped you guys. Even if you're a stunt rider or a stock rider, I hope it helps you guys out a little bit, and you know, hopefully keeps your bike a little bit cooler. So before I get out of here, I want to reiterate 2 things. Please, for the love of God, drain the water and water wetter out of your bike before it freezes. And for the love of God, do not remove that radiator cap if your bike is at operating temp or higher, because you're gonna get 30-degree burns all over you. So as always, this is Brian636 telling you guys thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys watching the channel. I'm out of here. Peace.